Today, I want to talk about variants, specifically vinyl record variants, or color pieces of vinyl, if you will. It's amazing how record collecting, for me anyways, went from a way to get more music on the cheap to now I just bought 4 copies of the same album. Do these copies even sound different? And what band is even worthy of buying 4 copies of the same LP? Hint, this is not a video about the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Unlimited Love. First off, what record am I talking about? The Frightnrs Always. If you don't know who the Frightnrs are, we're gonna dive into that. But first, the vinyl. Released on Daptone Records in 2022, Always is a follow-up to their debut album, also on Daptone, from 2016, Nothing More to Say. This release comes in 4 variations. You got the standard black vinyl edition. There's also an indie store exclusive red and blue splatter with a white variant label. This is Daptone's Support Your Local Record Store label. And then there's a plaid room exclusive, and I think they're calling this like a yellow sunburst, which is limited to 750 copies. And then my favorite is the Queen's Aurora, which, I mean, just look at this thing, it's amazing. Now this is limited, but I don't know how limited this one is. And then they also offered this one with this really nice purple vinyl here, this purple 45. I'll break this out as well, I should have that prepared. But this purple vinyl here of this is just really sick also. This is a single of Always, backed with its instrumental as well. So why did I buy these? I want to talk about that from the fan perspective, as well as talking about color variants in general. To cut to the chase, I really support this band, as you can see here, and this label as much as I can. There are a couple of record labels out there that I'll pretty much buy anything that they produce. Daptone Records and Big Crown Records. And I want to save talking about Big Crown for a separate video since they really deserve it, and they have a lot of color variant choices as well. Some that I have on order and some that I just got in. So it's important to me that these labels and these bands exist. And that's really the main reason enough to buy all of these copies. Granted, they will sell out since they are actually limited, so there is a collector aspect in me that's always there, but I can almost say for certain that I'm never gonna sell any of these pieces. The Frightnrs are a rocksteady reggae group from Queens, New York, and they made a name for themselves on the New York scene back in 2015-ish. They released a few singles, and they had an amazing EP that I pray one day gets pressed on vinyl called The Inner Lover's Quarrel. And this stuff can be had on Apple Music or on their Bandcamp site, and I'm gonna link to those in the description below. 2 of the popular tracks from The Inner Lover's Quarrel they did release on 45, and I've got one of them here, and this is from a label called Mad Decent, and I have it on this Zootropic vinyl, which actually gives you a little secret message on it when you play it, as well as has this really awesome graphic effect. So you can see it here, it's different colors on both sides. The band actually caught the attention of Daptone Records in 2016, and they decided to release the first full-length reggae LP for Daptone Records, Nothing More to Say. Don't know, Daptone is based out of Brooklyn, New York. They're an independent label, and I would argue, along with Big Crown / Truth and Soul Records, are one of the main reasons why there's even a vinyl market or a resurgence for vinyl in the last 20 years. Just so happens that Daptone is 20 years old this year, and back in 2002, it was absolutely insane to be making solely 45s and LPs recorded from analog tape. There wasn't even a market for it at the time until Daptone created one. If you disagree with me, you're wrong, but please comment below. I would love to tell you why you're wrong. Daptone is responsible for artists like Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings, the Budos Band, Sugarman 3, and they've made a name for themselves making authentic analog music. I was initially drawn to them because of their funk music, but they've introduced me to so many other types of records, like even a cappella soul records and boogaloo and Latin, and now, most recently, the Frightnrs rocksteady reggae. The Frightnrs were not the first reggae records produced for Daptone. Victor Tickla Axelrod, who's a genius musician and producer, has remixed or dubbed out some of the classic soul and funk records from Daptone and their reissues like Bob and Jean to make some of the greatest rocksteady soul reggae out there. This one here is one of my favorites of all time. Along with this one, I'm a stickler for Coke Bottle Green. But this one here is, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And this is on a clear red vinyl with like purple highlights. And what's great is they've gone back to some of these old soul records like Bob and Gene. They take the vocals and strip them out, and then they retrack them to new reggae music that they produce with a group called the Inversions. I think that some of the Frightnrs are also in the Inversions, which is one awesome thing I love about Daptone. They have what seems to be like a stable of musicians, kind of like Stax Records back in the day, and they kind of record under different names and groups, and I think that really helped on making this new record, The Frightnrs Always. So let's talk about color variants in general. When I first started collecting records back in 2000, it was extremely rare for me to even find a color LP. I didn't own any until much later in my collecting, and I know back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the color variants were almost non-existent, and if they did get made, they were usually poor quality. Which leads to one of my questions collecting vinyl is, do these color variants sound any different? And after doing some digging on the web, I came across a great article that I'll link in the description from YourSoundMatters.com. And in this article, they talk with a pressing plant in Ohio called Gotta Groove. The basic consensus is because black colorant is used more often, it can have more consistency when pressing the record. What material makes up the colorant affects the molds that are used, and the molds can have defining characteristics on the vinyl, like if there's a lot of surface noise. Black vinyl uses black carbon for the colorant, which is very widely used and therefore gives a lot more consistency. And this makes a lot of sense if you think about it. Most new artists are only going to go for black vinyl, and most labels, as well as most pressing plants, are going to start with only black vinyl. So using it more just means more consistency. And then having to switch over to color requires a lot of changes, which can actually introduce variables. And they've seen examples where the softer vinyl mold from a color variant actually makes the grooves track better. So it's not a hard and fast rule that black vinyl is better, but it is more consistent. They also go on to say that white opaque vinyl, or any color opaque vinyl, as opposed to a natural vinyl, which is actually like a milky translucent. Here's an example of what is called clarity vinyl from Analog Productions. As you can see here, this is like a translucent colored vinyl. It's not totally clear, but this is before they add the colorant to it. And they claim that this is one of the greatest sounding vinyls out there. And I think that it's mainly because they just spend a lot of time making sure that the pressings are consistent. Now, white vinyl or opaque vinyl does tend to be less consistent, and so therefore it does lead to more noise issues sometimes. They go on to say that like a clear vinyl, either something like this, which is a colored clear, or even like the splatters that have clear, actually are very good with their consistency as well, which clears up something that I was always told, which is that clear vinyl doesn't sound as good as regular vinyl. I can say that these four pressings all sound identical. They all come from the same press, they're all pressed in the Czech Republic, and they all sound amazing. It's funny because I hear a lot of people complain about quality control with records these days, and I could say since I buy almost everything that they sell, Daptone never has an issue with quality records. In fact, the quality has only gone up over the years, expanding to these colors, as well as having awesome gatefolds and rice paper sleeves included, which is really, really nice. After the Frightnrs released their debut album in 2016, in fact, while it was being pressed and mixed, their singer Dan Klein tragically passed away. At the time that this album came out, I didn't even know that. I'm not much of a social media person in my personal life, and I had just had my second kid, so vinyl collecting was taking a back seat, but I never knew why this vinyl was so sought after other than it being some of the best reggae that I ever heard in my life. And then when I found out about their singer, I was heartbroken. So for years, I would tell people about this band, and until just recently, I got back into vinyl collecting pretty hardcore, and the first thing I did was go out and buy these, which are the color variants of their first record. This is Nothing More to Say in the purple splatter edition. They also have a Turntable Lab edition, which I just picked up, which is absolutely amazing. It's a purple and orange like mixture, if you will. And I can say too that this being an opaque, even though it's an opaque vinyl, still sounds very good. And then they also came out with More to Say Versions, which is the dub version of their first album, which was remixed and dubbed by Victor Tickla Axelrod. And it comes with these amazing, awesome 3D glasses, which I've yet to use. They have their Frightnrs logo on them. You can see that there. And then they also had this one pressed with this amazing, it's like a purple, real dark purple-y translucent color vinyl, which is real sick. So the only thing I don't have is the black version of More to Say Versions, which is again the dubbed out version of this, but I have the purple and I'm pretty happy with that. So when a label like Daptone puts out these multiple variants, is it just a money grab or marketing hype? I would say that it depends on the label / artist, and in the case of Daptone and Big Crown Records, nothing that they do is a money grab. Sure, they put out a deck of playing cards or even an air freshener, but it's just because they think it's cool, and I think it's pretty cool too. And I'll say, I think there is a little, hey, I got this sick thing that they only made 500 copies of, and I guess you could call it exploiting FOMO, but I will say this, there is a method to Daptone, and it seems Big Crown as well with their color variants. They usually put out a normal black unlimited edition, and then they have them repressed, and sometimes they don't. Then they have a label exclusive color and an indie store exclusive, which is usually designed to help promote the record stores, and then maybe a specific indie store like Plaid Room or Turntable Lab will have a very limited set. This seems very intentional and allows for different groups to have exclusive copies that are special to them, or if you're like me and other Pokemon collectors, you gotta catch them all. So a lot of other people were upset at the number of color variants for the Red Hot Chili Peppers' new album, but again, looking at the smaller Daptone model, the Chili Peppers are just a lot larger and more widely known, so instead of 4 variants, there are 25. But some labels do just straight up keep pressing colors just to keep making money from the same album, and I don't fully support this. When these copies are gone from Daptone, they are gone, and when the UHQR records are gone from Analog Productions, they're gone. So labels, don't use color variants just to sell records. Keep things authentic like Daptone and the Frightnrs. Did I buy these records to hoard them and sell them for a profit? No. I'm a collector. I will spin this vinyl as I will spin all the pieces of vinyl I have. This video was just really a thank you to Daptone and the Frightnrs and Victor Axelrod for making this record, and to show that tons of us out there want you to continue, even with a new singer. I heard the Frightnrs with a couple of different singers and they still sound amazing, so even if the name changes, just keep making awesome rocksteady reggae. It really does help people. I'm one of those people. I won't even get into all the stuff that I was going through when Nothing More to Say came out and how much that album helped me get through those tough times. This is good music. I will continue to make good music recommendations on this channel, one, to share my collection, but really to share these artists and to try to help and spread the word for them. I hope you learned something about color variants in this video. I personally love color record copies and want more of them to come out. They just look so amazing. I mean, come on, this Queen's Aurora is just beautiful. This is probably one of the sickest pieces of vinyl I have. So hit me up with some comments if you'd like to see more artists or other things in my collection. Follow me on Discogs and make sure you subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot, and I'll see you guys on the next one.